Hello all of you wonderful people, it's Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and I want to talk to you today about video games. I know, shock horror considering the channel, but mainly to do with what video games you like and what you don't like. I mean, the thing is, you can't help what you like. It's a fact of life that not everyone is going to see the world in the same way as you do, especially when it comes to media. From films and music all the way through to the glorious art form that is video games, you're gonna find pockets of fans deriding others for liking one franchise over another. It's the byproduct of choice that we will instinctively defend video games that we like because we chose them in some form or another, and this love can run so deep that you'll be dying on many a hill protesting why a certain digital domain has taken root within your brain. But let's face it, we've all got a few guilty pleasures stored away that we utterly adore but have to admit that they aren't exactly well made, and such is the focus of our list today. For these games might have absolutely bombed in the charts or with critics, but for some reason or another have stuck with us for years and years. So with this in mind, I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 terrible video games you can't help but love. Number 10, Harvester. Harvester is a truly unique game, and is quite possibly the closest that you can get to experiencing a hallucinogenic drug trip without breaking any laws. It genuinely might well be one of the most bizarre games that I've ever played, and it's a title that isn't even the slightest bit shy about diving into the surreal. The narrative revolves around Steve, who awakes in a pseudo-1950s American suburb with no idea how he got there. Now the rest of the town treats him like he's faking being an amnesiac, and all encourage him to join the Lodge. In order to do so, the player must enact some truly bizarre rituals and pass tests set by other members. Every single person that you interact with is so utterly strange that it makes your skin crawl, and they all deliver lines of dialogue that make porn actors look like bloody Patrick Stewart. Everything feels wrong and looks genuinely disturbing, plus the combat in Harvester is just awful, making the entire second half of the game an absolute slog as it relies on this mechanic all too frequently. And yet, you can't stop playing. It's endlessly quotable, utterly memorable, but feels like it was purpose designed to elicit a negative reaction from the player. If any other game tried this, it would fall flat on its face, but that's just what makes Harvester so entrancingly unique. Number 9, Big Rigs Over-the-Road Racing. Never has a game been so utterly broken that it transcends all logic and becomes something of a cult classic. But then again, Big Rigs Over-the-Road Racing is unlike anything that you've seen before. Now that statement does seem pretty outlandish when you first lay eyes on this title, seeing as it just appears to be a generic racing game. However, the moment that the race actually begins, well, you'll experience something like the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey, but in place of colours and existential images, you'll get a litany of game-breaking bugs and a mind-blowing moment when you come to your first bridge and fall straight the way bloody through it. It is impossible not to have a good time playing this absolutely broken game, as there are no physics, you can clip through walls, buildings, and even mountains, and the best part is that if you reverse, you can actually travel at light speed thanks to the fact that the developer never put a speed limit cap on. Now while critics label this as blatantly unfinished, it is still a laugh riot if you don't actually go looking for a proper racing title. Number 8, Deadly Premonition 1 and 2. Swery65, or simply Swery to his mates, is one of the most unhinged video game directors that I've ever had the pleasure to come across. He is an auteur mastermind who will simply just do whatever he wants, oftentimes flying in the face of what traditional publishers would actually look for when making a game. And the rabid cult following gained from Deadly Premonition 1 and the recently released sequel isn't something that you can ignore. It is, however, a cult following that's developed entirely by accident. You see, these games, well, they are not well made. And I'm not being harsh when I say that, because at the time of recording this, Deadly Premonition 2 runs in single frame digits on the Nintendo Switch, and the original had a multitude of odd programming quirks that stunted the experience for many. Yet it is one of those games where the depth, comedy, and absolutely surreal nature of the piece wins out entirely. This is not a masterpiece of game design, but it is an utterly enjoyable affair, filled with WTF moments, laughably bad dialogue, and at its core, a really compelling murder mystery. Dig deep, because these are true gems. Number 7, Pyongyang Racer. Have you ever wanted to know more about Pyongyang? Well, of course you have. Thanks to the air of mystery that surrounds North Korea and the harsh tourist laws that they place on people trying to visit the area, any information that we can actually get out of it is useful. Or at least that's what I thought before playing Pyongyang Racer, because the only things that I actually learned from this game were that there were never more than 3 cars on the road at any one time, that alluring but quite hard-faced police officers will berate me at random intervals, and that the entire area appears to be made out of old Hollywood sets where the population is told to stay indoors at all times. Actually on second thought, maybe that is actually closer to the mark than I realised. Laughable presentation aside, the game is unintentionally hilarious, with you collecting oil drums and information about historic landmarks, all of which provide next to no actual useful detail and possess images so tiny and pixelated that you think that you were collecting used tissues instead of postcards. But seeing as many of us might never travel to the region, this is the closest that we'll ever get to experiencing Pyongyang. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing in all honesty, but still, you have to appreciate the attempt. Number 6, Rogue Warrior. Now, I could easily just link you to the end credits where Mickey Rourke raps a rather offensive and tone-deaf set of bars over some garage track band that was knocked up over lunchtime and called this entry a day, such as the sheer oddity that is Rogue Warrior. However, what truly makes this game so bad it's good fodder is the fact that it actually takes itself seriously. And that, much like The Room, is why it's so imperfectly perfect. Hearing Mickey Rourke drool out expletives as he guts another unknown guard like a fish is one thing, but the backdrop of this special forces porn fantasy is what makes the entire premise so utterly ludicrous. The gameplay is also absolute tat, with aiming that feels like you're coming down off of the worst festival binge ever, and AI that would make shredded lettuce look like Einstein in comparison. And yet, if you want a 3 to 4 hour laugh at something rather than with it, this is definitely the game for you. Just make sure that your kids can't hear this, as it is Mighty Blue. Number 5, DAYMARE 1998. The original Resident Evil game managed to capture lightning in a bottle. Not only was it expertly directed and provided some of the most iconic horror villains and monsters in gaming, but its uber cheesy dialogue managed to win the hearts of gamers the world over, becoming seen as a game with A+ ranked gameplay and a B-movie script. Enter DAYMARE, which, if we're using the same expression, could be ranked as a C in terms of gameplay and has a script that not even a Z-lister would want to touch. And yet, it is easily the most banter survival horror game that I've played in ages. In fact, our own Greg Hicks called it hot, steamy wank, and yet still managed to have more than a few laughs thanks to the title's inability to deliver scares or even bloody serviceable line readings across its runtime. And I use runtime very loosely here because this game had more hard crashes than a destruction derby. Still, if you're in the mood for some utterly stinky and almost offensively terror-bad gameplay that may or may not run, and which is utterly and unintentionally hilarious, then DAYMARE is definitely for you. Number 4, the Dynasty Warriors franchise. I say this as a person who owns every single Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, Orochi, Gundam Piece, One Piece, and Hyrule Warriors game, but as a franchise, as a whole, this is pretty laughably bad. Now don't get me wrong, I love these games, but when it comes down to it, especially with the Dynasty Warriors franchise, it's been the same game since Dynasty Warriors 2 came out in the year 2000. At this point in time, it is a franchise that's become like FIFA, just a few updates here, some new faces there, and that's it. Go take over China. And nearly every deviation from this formula has seen the series floundering. Dynasty Warriors 9, anyone? Yeah, I thought so. However, will I buy the next collector's edition? You bet your ass I will, because the concept of smashing the same button combos over and over again offers a strange sense of escapism. It's the purest power fantasy that you are a massive, legendary warrior turning everything into paste, and you just don't need to think, you just need to fight. It's simple, it's stupid, it's utterly cathartic. So while it will never be a series that engages my brain, it will always engage my heart. Number 3, GODAI Elemental Force. When your character announces an ambush a good 10 seconds before the enemies actually appear thanks to the game struggling to load in assets, and you're constantly floating above the floor because the devs hadn't quite figured out how to align everything, you know you're in for a so bad it's good time. And GODAI Elemental Force, well, it delivers that in spades. The game promises action spectacle unlike no other, with you assuming the power of the elements themselves. And you know what? In a way, that is true, because the combat is so utterly dire, I can honestly say it is unlike anything I've seen before. Take for example the fact that you have to scroll through your spells in real time, which renders you unable to attack, and then when you do get a spell ready, the wind-up is so slow and your magic drains so quick that you'd be better off using melee weapons that are just lying around, which don't even connect half the time. And the camera, well, it has an absolute heart attack if you go anywhere near it and swings wildly out of control, which is exactly what you want from an action game, right? Still, the sheer comedy of basically playing How Not to Make a Game the game is definitely worth a look. Number 2, Demolition Girl. Okay, so there will be some of you out there who simply won't appreciate the thought of playing a game where you can scan a giant bikini-clad woman in a helicopter in order to get her body measurements. I totally get that. However, the other half of the crowd is already adding Demolition Girl to their Amazon baskets, as this game really is that bizarre. The story, if you needed one, is that this lovely lady called Riho is stung by an alien squid and becomes a massive lass who accidentally destroys cities, and it's up to you to get her back to normal before the other alien squids use her as an avatar for destruction to take over the world. I'm not sure how measuring her assets is useful to this, but then again, that only makes up one level. After that, you actually have to fire darts into her face while she eats cake. I wish I was making this up. Demolition Girl was a budget game that is about as deep as a puddle, but it's so short, hilariously out of touch, and unlike anything else that you owe it to poor Riho to help her out. And you know what? It's still less embarrassing than playing extreme beach volleyball, so it's got that as well. And number 1, Sneak King. From utterly baffling video game food tie-ins in armor, weapons, and characters, all the way to full standalone video games, there's never a dull moment when the industries of fast food and video games collide. While every ounce of my being wanted to put Pepsi Man on this list for its sheer WTF rating, after revisiting Sneak King on the Xbox 360, I knew it was time for this whopper to shine. Now, what makes Sneak King so terribly alluring is that its premise is so utterly laughable. As the Burger King, you need to sneak and stealth your way through levels and up behind unsuspecting and hungry people in order to stuff burgers down their throats. That sounds like a horror title, right? Imagine having this creepy perma-smiling royal smash his forearm down your throat because your belly rumbled. But the actual gameplay of this game isn't actually too bad and actually has been well made. But its premise and clear lack of understanding when it comes to how disturbing this title's core experience is what makes it a WTF one of a kind. Go check it out. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 terrible video games you can't help but love. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below, as well as any other choices that you might have had, because who knows, I might do a comments edition further down the line. If you want to chat to me further, you can do so over on Twitter at RetroJ0, or you can swing by Live and Let's Dice. It's my personal gaming channel where I stream every Wednesday and Sunday. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. We detailed today about video games that you couldn't help but love, that were bad things that you just absolutely adored. And you know what, my friend? We should definitely feel like that about ourselves, because sometimes we can get in our own heads and tell ourselves that we are not worth a jot. But I am telling you, my friend, that you definitely are. You are a massive ledge. You deserve love, happiness, and respect. We all do as humans. I want you to go out there with love for yourself in your heart so that you can spread it to other people and help people up instead of punching down on people. Now go out there and absolutely smash it, you big ledge. As always, I've been Jules. You've been awesome. Never forget that. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.